Okay.
Hello, we are the Coates book group, and this is our roundtable. Welcome. My name's Kayla. If you guys want to introduce yourself.
My name's Tony.
And my name is Charnay.
And
the way our roundtable is going to work,
no, go ahead. You're fine.
The way our roundtable is going to work is each of us has watched the other two individual portions and have prepared one question each for the other members, and we're going to alternate and ask each other questions either to clarify or kind of follow-up questions to the individual portion. And mine was basically just paralleling the current political climate and Trump's administration with post-Reconstruction era and the rise of white supremacy and violence against African Americans.
Perfect. So my question for you, Kayla, I'm just going to read it right here. It seems that violence and white supremacy occur in the extremes, either out of fear of minorities rising or out of celebration of a white supremacist in power. Do you agree, or do you think that the response is more extreme when acting in fear? So basically saying we had these violent reactions after Obama's presidency because of fear, and then we still also had violent reactions after Trump's presidency because of celebration, go Confederacy, etc.
Right.
Do you agree with that it happens for both? And when do you think the response is more extreme?
Yeah, I do agree that it's definitely a combination of both, but my initial reaction is that it's actually more out of fear, because when you actually look at Trump's, even his slogan, "Make America Great Again," it's the idea that I don't know, people are fearful of the current American society and needs to bring it back to old America. And I think that fear is a really powerful tool. And I think that when people are afraid and feel like their livelihoods and their society is being changed from what they want and from what they would want their society to look like, then they're willing to kind of lash out in extremes, which is why I think my initial reaction is that it is more out of fear. But yeah, a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork now and being very open about, or a lot more open in the past than what I've seen personally, because they're celebrating their certain views now that Trump is in power. But
yeah, and not only are they celebrating their views, I feel like now, because a person in such high power is expressing these same awful views,
validating,
they're more comfortable. Exactly. You have any thoughts, Charnay, on this?
Okay, so my question is, could the violence toward Blacks during Obama's presidency be predicted given the history of the United States?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's actually something that Coates unfortunately kind of talks about. And he kind of implies almost that Obama's election might have even spurred this backlash and towards white supremacy again, because it's kind of been simmering underneath this whole time. And white supremacy kind of is the foundation of our country, sadly. And the fact that, certain people are feeling threatened in Obama's election kind of was, the opposite, in how they felt validated with Trump's election. They were feeling really, vulnerable during Obama's election. So, I would definitely think so. What do you guys think?
I feel the exact same way. I think that history can definitely repeat itself, and I think that it has done that with white supremacy in the case of Obama's election. And I feel that the election of Trump has led to a rise in these events because he isn't necessarily putting it down.
Right. Do you think it was a stretch that I was kind of saying that Coates implied that, or do you think that do you guys agree with me that he kind of feels that Obama's election kind of spurred this on maybe?
I definitely agree with your statement.
No, I agree with you completely.
Yes.
So should we move to Charnay's video just for time's sake?
Yes. Okay, so sorry, Tony, for cutting you off. My individual portion was about the perception of Black women in America and how this has led to their position now in America.
So I'll go first, right, Tony? Okay. So yeah, you specifically discussed how Cosby used his cake speeches to kind of talk about the current like image of Black women in America. Do you think that Cosby's social class, which Coates talked about a little bit, and even more specifically his treatment of women that has come out recently, framed his ideas about blaming women for the destruction of the Black race?
Yes, I think that Cosby has some arguments, and they're not all rooted in history. I think a lot of them are rooted in his personal history.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the fact that his father did abandon him with his single mother,
Mm-hmm.
and he connects this and he almost explodes it in a way that it makes it seem like every Black man is abandoning their families and all Black women are having these problems in society, when this isn't true in perspective. And obviously, his thoughts about women and his open allegations. Oh, actually, the allegations have proved to be true now, right? The court case has happened?
I think so.
Okay, well, the
allegations not true, but a lot of women came out, and it's kind of hard to.
So you can see kind of psychologically why he would have negative views of Black women. And this mostly isn't rooted in history. It's mostly rooted in his negative perceptions in his daily life.
Yeah. And that's what I found so interesting is like, yeah, you did bring up like in your analysis of his cake speeches that he kind of was blaming like the majority of it on just Black women, even though he himself was raised by a single mother.
Exactly.
So that's why I was kind of confused, really, like where like a lot of what he owes like in his life is to his mother, even though he kind of feels like the destruction of like the Black image is being destroyed by women.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's obvious that he needs some working on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't be biased anyway. All right, my question for you, Charnay, was, so you mentioned that the names of Black American people, you mentioned the names of Black American people and how they were used to relate back to Africa. Can this be argued today? Because as an African, I know many Black names I hear aren't African at all. Some are French, but the French colonized these nations. Mm-hmm. Is the argument of these names making one feel more close to her roots still valid?
Okay. Well, I think that based on the article I read by a psychologist, I think she had a PhD, and she was basically talking about the history of how Black American naming traditions came about. And the first thing she said was the African names began as a way to feel self-pride and Black pride and root yourself back to Africa. But after that, names became more, the want for more unique and complicated names led to the names that we see today. And a lot of those things don't just come from Africa, they come from other nations. And they are French, they are Polish, they are Italian, and a lot of the things like the apostrophes are also from other nations. So really it's, what it has become today, I feel like isn't really about connecting to your ancestors in Africa, but what it was in the beginning of the changing your name movement was structured for Africa. What it has become today is very different, and it's not simply based on African roots or traditions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Cool. Alrighty. Want to move on to you, Tony?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So my video was about the image of the Black woman in America and the history of not statements of why it should be this view, but the history of how we came to this view. So I'm not saying that because of this history, we should all believe these things, because I definitely disagree with all of them. But yeah, what were your questions? Charnay, what was your question?
Okay, so my question is, Coates mentions in the second chapter that the first time he met Michelle Obama, her eloquence reminded him of a white woman. So what qualities do you attribute, what qualities first come in your mind when you think of a white woman versus the qualities of a Black woman? And would you say that your beliefs are universal in a way?
So when you say you, do you mean me personally?
Yes, you personally.
Right. So when I think of a Black woman, I have actually a pretty interesting viewpoint, because growing up, my parents, not that we were like, oh no, you're not Black, you're not like a Black American person, but they would say, Tony, look at your skin and look at this Black construction paper. are you the same color? And I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, okay, you're not Black, you're Nigerian, Swiss American. That person's not Black in color. They are this, this, and this, or they're, you know. So I grew up without the idea of Black, white. I saw Italian American, French American.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an amazing way to grow up.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also can be a little bit troublesome with questions like these of like, what is a Black? How do I see a Black woman? Like it's so broad for me.
Right. Which I feel like is a good thing because there should be
amazing.
one type of,
Yeah.
Black woman, Black person, like Asian
Right.
and white person.
Exactly. And it's also so I'm Swiss and Nigerian, as I probably mentioned like 30 times in this class. But when I say a white woman, yes, I'm brown in complexion. When someone looks at me, they'll say I'm a Black American woman, but I will never disregard my mother's side, completely ignore that. So when I look at myself, am I saying, like, of who I am, do I have the traits of a Black woman or a white woman? It's just a huge internal question. Yeah, or both. Why do I have to have the traits?
Choose. Yeah.
Either. And what was the second part?
Do you think this is universal?
No.
No.
Universal is.
Unfortunately, I wish that was a universal.
I know, right? Universal, sorry, let me pull out some cute notes because I think I mentioned this a little bit. I don't know, it'll be too long for me to find it. But universal is that the white woman is pure and she's a sign of modesty, beautiful, blonde hair, blue eyes, Gigi Hadid. And the Black woman is like, she's either angry, she's either very seductive, college education, or she is like everybody's mama, like come back here, y'all, kind of thing. So definitely not positive viewpoints for the Black woman. She's basically seen as the opposite of the beautiful, peaceful, quiet angel of a white woman in society.
Okay.
Do you agree, disagree, guys?
I do agree with what you were saying. And I love that you were raised differently, because the second question actually brings it back and it like connects like what people should be thinking versus what people are raised to think based on the media.
Yeah. It's like when you walk in literally like this, my curtains are from Nigeria. Like it's just not here. And then Kayla, what was your question?
Yeah, so my question, Coates' last chapter of his book was titled My President Was Black. Can you talk about the effect of the fact that our First Lady as well was Black and the effect specifically on young Black girls?
Yes. So our First Lady being, I say being as if it's present day, but our First Lady being Black was huge for young Black American girls and young Black girls around the world, because when thinking about the role models for young Black girls who weren't actively reaching out to find role models. Obviously, there are and have always been Black women who are doing amazing things, but in a lot of cases, they were not in the spotlight. You would have to kind of go digging for them. But Michelle Obama was so much in the spotlight that these young Black girls would see an adult Black woman doing wonderful things, carrying herself in a beautiful way, taking control of her position and making changes based on that position.
Totally.
Instead of the Black adult woman that they would typically see in music videos or in media or in film. So I think that Michelle Obama being the First Lady was huge and crucial for not just Black young women in America, but all over the world.
Right. And all women. She inspires me daily.
True.
And,
awesome.
And do we have more time? Okay, I just want to say one thing. In the book, she also describes how she was raised and how she wants to implement that you shouldn't think of them as role models specifically, but like how you said, there are Black women and Black men doing amazing things all over the world. And you should try to encourage them and like follow them and learn the message that they're trying to send also.
Yeah, that was a perfect way to wrap this up. Kayla, do you have anything else to add? Or?
I don't.
Great.
Go team now.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.